Welcome to the Principal Podcast, where we talk about how the best professional services firms grow. Whether you're looking to scale your firm or learn from the stories of founders and leaders who've done it, you're in the right place. Join us as we interview the best leaders in professional services. Let's get on with the show.
Well, everybody, today we have a special guest, Lee Bryan, who is the CEO of Arcus Compliance, who gets involved in a lot of challenging things that many of us go, whoa, I don't know if I want to be involved in compliance, but someone's got to do it. And Lee seems to do it at a very high level for his clients in the UK and the European Union. And today he's going to share his story of how he got involved in it and what he can do for you and your organization. So Lee, the first thing I always like to find out from somebody is, how did you get involved in consulting and then focus and build Arcus Compliance?
Right. Well, firstly, thank you, Dennis, for having me on. Really happy to be here. My journey into compliance wasn't, I suppose, a traditional path, and I'm not, and you rightly say, nobody really wants to focus on compliance from an entrepreneurial level. You have to be somewhat of a regulatory nerd, I think. I came at it from a different way. I'd sort of done consulting for various companies across various industries, so more on the management side consulting. And then I ended up working on a sort of a project for a regulatory compliance company in the vape industry, so not novel nicotine.
Okay.
And I came into the vape industry pre-regulation. So around 2013, I came into the industry. Regulation was announced for Europe in 2014, and it went live in 2016. And that industry made more millionaires in their 20s than any other industry. It was a boom. People mixing liquids in their bathtub almost. The level of quality and regulatory compliance was pretty low benchmark. So I could see that the industry a lot of people were going to fail. We were going to get a large scale failure in that industry. Mm-hmm. And my decision to come into the vape industry was entirely commercial. But when I got into it, I realized the harm reduction potential of those novel nicotine mediums. Having lost my dad and paternal grandparents to smoking related illnesses, it became a bit of a crusader. I became a bit of an industry crusader for it. And I looked at it from an entrepreneurial level, not a scientific or a regulatory legal perspective, because what happens is a lot of these guys, these founders, and it's the same whether you're in novel nicotine or in the beauty sector or in our other sort of disruptive founders are commercial. They're commercial focused. They focus on revenue, right, and everything else gets left behind, really. And that is because of the growth, the commercial growth element, but also because they don't understand it. Regulatory regulations are written in legalese. The average guy, the commercial guy, they don't understand it. It makes them feel uncomfortable. So I saw it as an opportunity to almost create a platform or a company that took that pain away and delivered a solution in layman's terms, and layering in an old school layer of customer comes first type mentality. You if you promise something, you deliver it, and that's how we sort of grew. And so basically, when I left that previous company that I was contracting for, because it was particularly poorly run, one of the companies said to me, maybe it's time you open your own shop. And I thought, well, okay. So I did, and they were our first client. That was 10 years ago, and they're still with us now. So it's what testament to
means you're doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's the journey to where that got me into consulting and where Arcus came from.
Fabulous. I empathize and sympathize with you. My father passed away, and he was a heavy smoker in the U.S., and I observed that and saw what he went through and my family went through. And I'm not doing it, and never have, knock on wood. So, but I see the vape industry in the U.S. have similar challenges, maybe not quite as wild west as you were describing, but similar. And it's a challenging thing, and it's something that you look at and you go, I hope there's some solution for this eventually, because it's going to be, I think, the same, if not worse, than just tobacco. But regardless of that, you looked at a problem you saw, so you looked at a way to provide a solution to it. Why was that important? Was it because of the family background, or were there other factors that you felt were important to start this journey that you're on right now?
Well, it was very much an entrepreneurial commercial decision at the start, but then it did become more personal for sure. But I saw the opportunity, and what we solve, the way that I see it, is, a regulatory filing, depending on the industry. There's the bar to entry is you have to file a dossier to be able to sell on the market. But that is simply the barrier to entry. It's not the finish line. So what we do is take a more holistic approach. So, and I talk about this in my recent book, The Compliance Edge. I talk about the field medic versus the brain surgeon, right? So the brain surgeon is your regulatory expert. They are experts in their lane. There might be a lawyer, there might be a regulatory expert, it might be a scientist. They can help you produce a certain body of work, but they're not looking at everything, right? When a field medic enters the battlefield, they're triaging. They're looking at what the risks are, what's going to happen, what is going to be ultimately terminal to your business. So I class myself as a regulatory field medic, and I talk about that in my newsletter as well. And I wouldn't say, I don't class myself as a specialist in any particular discipline, but I understand the obligations from an entrepreneurial perspective, and I understand what an entrepreneur is trying to achieve. We have the brain surgeons in our business. That you can't run a regulatory business without the eggheads, if you like, and I mean that in the non-derogatory term. They're
I understand.
the nerds, if you like. But from what I feel that we offer is almost a safe space for disruptive founders to be able to say, look, I haven't got a clue what I need to do, help me. So we built a process that, and I think I'll talk about it as we go forward, but we built a process, what we call the compliance needs analysis, which is a deep dive gap analysis that we walk them through so we understand the obligations. And it's essentially a risk assessment that allows us to understand where their gaps are. And obviously that changes by company, product type, the markets they're in, the stage that they're at. I have like a methodology called the ARC methodology, and a part of that is a compliance maturity arc. So when you're a startup, you're flying under the radar. You're not in anybody's radar. But as you grow, revenue increases. You're showing up in more retail real estate. You're on more competitors' radars. You're on the enforcement body's radar. You increase. They set more exposure, exactly. So they've set their stall out when they're a startup, and what tends to happen is it's not negligence. They set their regulatory strategy out on day one, and then they focus on growth, so their exposure increases, but they do nothing with regulatory compliance. So the gap between here and here means there's a lot of exposure. And when you're a growing brand with a lot of revenue, understandably, you're going to get competitors, and they will take that opportunity to talk to enforcement bodies and ensure that you're penalized.
Well,
so we help them
punish for your indiscretion, more or less.
Yeah.
And so what happens is people get excited and enamored with the revenue coming in. They think, oh, I'll get to compliance later. And before they know it, it's staring them in the face. And so what you're trying to do in your compliance needs analysis is helping them understand, look at here are the things that are going to occur. You can even probably do a timeline, I would think. Here's what you're doing. Here's what's going to occur. On average, this is when there's potential risk you need to be able to mitigate. Are you ready to do all that? And if not, here's why we're going to come in. And tell me more about your ARC methodology. How does that come into play?
Okay, so it's ARC was a happy accident. It wasn't by design, to be honest. So I looked at all of the fundamentals of what good compliance. So you got agile systems. So how flexible your systems are to scale with you. Risk-based approach. So you're always monitoring and understanding where the risks are coming from. You're measuring the likelihood and severity, and you've got systems to mitigate those risks.
Okay.
And because, the obligations are there. And if you're a big multinational with a team of lawyers and regulatory specialists and a 6-7 figure budget, no problem. You tick all the boxes. You do what's necessary.
Correct.
But as a small startup, they don't always have the budget to do everything to the highest possible standard. So we work with them to say, right, this is going to derail you quick. You need to allocate budget there. This is less likely to happen. So you probably could spend a little bit less budget on that. That's what we do. So it's enabling the little guy to punch up, the David and Goliath type fit. And then the last one in the acronym is culture. So compliance culture. Now, that's often the most elusive because it's top down. And if the team don't see that the boss or the founder is bothered about compliance, they're less likely to be bothered about compliance.
Yeah.
And compliance isn't a silo. It runs through everything. It runs through marketing. It runs through design. Can we put this on the packaging? Can we say this in our advertising? So it needs to be a company-wide thing.
Commitment.
A company-wide commitment. And the culture is really, really difficult to hit and crack. Yeah, instill it. But, you can instill it, but it never goes away. And I talk about compliance being a moving target. What's right today might not be right in 6 months' time. So it's never a one and done. It grows, it morphs, it breathes.
That was, to me, I love that because the fact that you've got the 3 different components in the ARC, but the last one, the culture, and I also like the word commitment because they're going to do this, they're going to stay the course. But how challenging is that when you work with different countries? In the EU, one country might have this version of compliance. And if they're doing business with someone in the UK, it could be a different look when they go over to France, when they go over to Germany or other countries over there. And are you following the compliance of the country you're selling in? I'm not aware, so I don't know. Or you follow the compliance of the manufacturing location in the UK?
Right. So you've hit on the problem that everybody faces, right? There's so many variables and nuances that it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of intelligence to be able to answer all of those questions. So in the main, European regulation is harmonized. So if it's right in one country, it's right in another. So it's set at a European level. There are some nuances. So, whether it's allergens and certain things like that, there might be some variation in packaging requirements. Obviously, language it has to be appropriate for the market that you're selling in. But it's really difficult. There's a lot of different variables that you need to be aware of, and since Brexit, the UK is now stepped away from the European regulations. So if you need a responsible entity in Europe, you would now need a separate one in the UK as well. So there's divergence that's happening more and more. We approached 10 years since Brexit, but the fact is that the divergence has only really started in the last 12 to 18 months, I would say.
Oh, really?
We're seeing a lot more of it. Yeah, I think that there was a lot of hangover from it. And from a regulatory perspective, the UK had a lot more things to worry about than a certain regulation for, cosmetics, or, it was further down the list of priorities, that's for sure.
Okay, let me one other question I have, because it's really fascinating. I imagine the audiences as well. Political factors. So you have a recent change in your government. If there's a new body who comes in, do they potentially bring in new compliance things that they want to see that weren't there a month ago?
Yes, to an extent. Obviously, the regulations in the UK are a lot more stable. In Europe in general, they're pretty stable.
Okay.
Now, whilst they may come, a new government or new prime minister might come in with a different moral compass and a different manifesto. Normally, any change comes in, and then you'll get 2 years before it comes into force.
So
And
it's
then
not
they-
gonna be rapid.
No, it tends not to be rapid. Although I think the last change to the tobacco and vapes bill, which is one of the markets we work in, gave the government a lot more powers to make rapid changes than what we would have seen historically. But that's rare. Normally,
That's more of an anomaly. Okay.
yeah.
Tell me how when you look at your clients today, who is your sweet spot customer? I mean, is it a company, not the large one you said with a cadre of lawyers and a whole bunch of people on staff that already do compliance, but probably somewhere more in that mid-range, size of employees and types of companies, if you would share that.
Yeah, I mean, we had like a fairly typical ICP, ideal customer profile. We operate in novel nicotine and the beauty market,
Okay.
so cosmetics, hair, skin, that sort of thing. So that's obviously the main element. Now, our ICP tends to be probably turning over 500,000 to up to 20 million. That's our sweet spot. They're operating in the UK and European markets. And that sometimes they've got no regulatory team, or sometimes they've got a reasonable sized regulatory team and they're looking for ad hoc support or to use some of our software tools. We have a lot of proprietary software tools that are deployed with a lot of our clients. But to be honest, recently we started working with a couple of accelerators, like business accelerators in the cosmetics and beauty space, and their minimum requirement for a lot of their applicants was 150k in turnover, which is normally below what we would work on.
Right.
But what we've found is, and this is a growing trend, particularly in beauty, you get like a young girl that borrows a few £1,000s from family and friends, goes to a white label manufacturer, creates a cosmetic product and a cosmetic brand, and essentially self-influences their audience. Yeah.
Through social media.
Through social media. So they have a TikTok shop, a Shopify shop, that type of thing. And they grow and they explode. And all of a sudden, 10,000 units sold in their first month. And they've got this great business growing, but they've got almost zero idea of what their regulatory and legal obligations are. So, and now what's happening is in Europe that, and this is proven with the recent stats from beginning of this year, and it's something that I've been chirping on about for about 2 years. We're the move from the original enforcement model, which was designed for the 80s and 90s, where you had an enforcement officer walking the streets, picking the shop up, a product off the shelf and making inquiries. Now we've got 1.5 billion electrical products coming into the UK every year. Half a dozen, it doesn't matter if you've got 50 people or half a dozen people, it's not cutting it. So a lot, what was happening is a lot of products were coming into the market with little or no oversight,
Slipping through the cracks, basically.
slipping through the cracks, and the cracks were big because of the volume. Yeah. But now, and it's something that I've been saying was coming, with bots and web crawlers and AI powered tools that actually multiply an enforcement officer's ability. Instead of them focusing on one case, they download their brain, if you like, and say, right, this is good. Tell me, just check those 1,000 products and tell me which ones that are not up to par.
Right.
So that's happening, and what's happened with that is that between 2022 and 2024, the EU Safety Gate, which is the official enforcement body portal, which is shared across all 27 member states,
Okay.
saw an increase of 114% of the number of unsafe products that went in that 2-year period. Wow. Now, 38% of them were cosmetics products. Wow. Right? So what I thought is there's an opportunity here, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that these young girls, these sort of TikTok shop owners are doing it through negligence. It's more ignorance in the nice way. They're not doing it to harm consumers. They're doing it because they think, wow, I've got a brand here, and this is,
they're not malicious.
There's no malicious intent at all. So what we're trying to do is now educate them and work with those type of guys. Now we assessed nearly 5,000 stores using some analytical software, and the top 3 in the UK, there was one in a UK brand that was compliant, they were perfect. There was 2 Korean beauty brands. Now they're doing millions a month, and the level of non-compliance was scary,
So they're so exposed.
Yeah. And I don't know whether that maybe with those guys there's a little bit of malicious intent, but most of them, it's not malicious intent, it's lack of understanding, lack of education. Yeah. So we're working with those guys, and they're like so they're outside of our normal sphere. But what I'm doing now, I'm creating a 90-day cohort program. So we take them from vulnerable to bulletproof in 90 days. So we bundle a lot of services together and are able to discount them because it's a cohort rather than one-to-one.
Okay. So with that being said, how do people know of Arcus? How do they know that you guys do you put out emails? Do you do seminars? Do you do sessions where you've got people that are doing outbound calling and talking to people? How do you get your name out there?
Well, all of those, all of the above, really.
Marketing strategies. Adam has the
Oh my God, sorry, Alexa off.
This is Operation.
Oh my God, I'm sorry, but my device heard Arcus. Oh my God, I apologize for that.
Would you like me to help you find some general resources about B2B marketing strategies?
Not at all, thank you. All right, so I apologize for that. I'm going to skip that brings into play. Oh my gosh, everyone's listening. I apologize.
Yeah, no, there's no issue at all.
So continue.
Yeah, so all of the above, really.
Okay.
So I went through an accelerator program back in 2018 with a guy called Daniel Priestley, which is the Key Person of Influence Accelerator. Now, at the time, Daniel Priestley was somewhat unknown. Now he's been on Diary of a CEO, 7 8.
I've heard his name, but
he's sort of blown up in the last 18 months to 2 years. A really, really good guy. And so he has this KPI, Key Person of Influence methodology, which focuses on 5 Ps, pitch, publish, profile, partnership, product. Okay. So I went through that, and a lot of that talks about, to be a KPI is the amount of output that you're doing in terms of content. So hence why I wrote both books. So I wrote the first book. The first book was in 2023, I think. And it was more of a tick box. It was almost right, I've got to do this as part of the program. So there wasn't a lot of my soul in there. And then I decided to write another book, which it widened the lane. It was more about compliance for disruptive founders. This is what you got to think about. And that came out in January of this year, which was the Compliance Edge.
That's the Compliance Edge you were referencing earlier.
Yeah. So that got to number one in all three categories that we published in Amazon UK. Got to number one in risk management on Amazon in the US as well. So I put a lot more of a soul into that one, and that was it was good to get that out there. So we draw a lot of leads from people downloading the book. The audio book comes out next month as well on that. So we have scorecards where, we can give people some information, right, consider this, and then they get a nice report. So we have a few lead magnets in that respect.
How do you follow up on that? For example, if I purchased your book where I beat your audio tape, how do you're aware who I am? I'm an individual. It may not be at a company. I could be self-employed when I just think about starting my cosmetics line or my potential in the tobacco industry. How do you know I did that?
So if you bought it from Amazon, we wouldn't necessarily know it, but we give a free PDF version of the book. So we have a lead magnet where, for all the videos that I would do, I do a lot of videos. We record and give information away, create shorts. And normally the call to action is either join our webinar, a monthly webinar, where we can explain a lot of what we're talking about today, or download the book for free. And then once they add their details in, obviously we get the information on that. So then we'll either reach out to them or add them into an outreach nurture campaign or something like that. The thing is that there's so much noise today. I'm of an age where, in the 90s, it was a lot easier. You had less noise, less AI noise. Now, I think it's a lot more difficult to stand out. I think the authenticity angle, the one-to-one angle works quite well. But I think you have to still do a bit of everything. So we do outreach, we publish videos, we do webinars, we advertise, we do social media, I do podcasts, I speak at events around the world. So yeah, a little bit of everything, I think.
Good. Now, when you said you do podcasts, how have they helped you? Is it where you're on like this one we're doing currently? Do you do your own that you send out to your clients? Tell me about what you attend.
I only guest on a podcast, yeah. And I've done quite a few, and I think it's really good for getting the message out there. I think particularly when you talk about things like the EU safety gate, it's probably one of the driest subjects that you could ever. Not many people are going to want to read that, but when they hear it, if they can hear it being spoken to them, I'm a big fan of audiobooks over reading a hard copy anyway, and I consume a lot of my information on the fly. So whether I'm in the car, whether I'm walking, whether I'm at the gym, I consume a lot of audiobooks and data that way. And I think a lot more people do that. Yeah. So I think podcasts is a better way, and audiobooks are a better way, and videos in general than written books and posts on LinkedIn. So I'm a big fan of podcasts. I like them a lot.
Wonderful. Let me pose a question to you. I'm a company. I think I have potentially, I'm not aware, or I have a compliance issue painfully been aware of, made aware of. Mm-hmm. How long does it take for them once they do that? They contact you, you then go in and do your compliance needs analysis. What's the selling cycle for contact where they go, let's do some business?
I mean, that's a difficult one. And I think it changes because most people come to us when there's a fire. And it depends at what they're coming in panic mode.
Yeah, is it a 3-alarm or is it a 5-alarm fire?
Exactly. Are we at DEFCON 1, or we got a bit more conflict? So in the main, what they want, or they've come to us at the point because they've ignored the warning signs, and now this is critical where, your product's coming off the market. So it tends to be we skip past the compliance needs analysis at that point because yeah, by the time you've gone through that process,
You got to put out the fire.
the house is burned down. Yeah.
Right.
So we have to put the fire out first. Then what happens is, and this tells a lot about the brand and a lot about the moral compass of the person.
Mm-hmm.
If they then disappear, you know that they have no interest in doing the right thing. They're basically, it's just chasing revenue. So, I mean, to be honest, I would say 1 in 4 are the ones that we actually work with, and we turn 75% away, because I have like a litmus test. Where do you want to be in 5 years' time? What's your plan? And if they haven't thought that far in advance, it's normally a good indication that they're just, right, how much money can I make before the house burns down? And they're not clients for us. We work with a maximum of 50 retained clients. We've worked with several hundred ad hoc clients over the last 10 years. They might come and do one project. They might come back and do another project. But I'd say 90% of our revenue comes from a core group of retained clients. Now, we max out at 50. If the average client is taking about 20 or 30 hours on a retainer, we max out at 50. But if we have some clients we have now some that are almost fully outsourced, where they're 100+ hours a month, so we actually allocate our resources to supporting them like an external compliance department.
Okay.
So they're the type of clients, and they stay with us. With most of our clients have been with us up to 10 years. We've got clients who've been with us 10 years. Most of them are long term. They very rarely
Do they sign contracts, Lee, or
yeah. We have a rolling 12-month contract, and then it's clear on what we will provide for them within the scope of that contract. And a lot of it is that, as I said, you've got these guys who are commercially astute. They're brilliant at marketing. They don't really understand the regulatory obligations, and they want to work with somebody that they trust who's got their back. And that's exactly our bag. I want to do the right thing by people who want to do the right thing and protect consumers. So,
well, and the key part there is the word trust. You mentioned it. You establish that. That's why they stay with you for 10 years.
yeah.
And then what about your growth? I mean, if you look at, are you satiated right now with where you're at? Are you trying to look at revenue growth and market share growth? Tell me about what you're seeing for your rest of this year and going in the next couple of years.
Yeah. So I think from a consulting perspective, we're pretty much at capacity. We've got a room for 1 or 2 clients, I would say. And what I noticed probably end of last year, beginning of last year, I'd say I started realizing that for us to grow, I need more staff. It's very linear. To get more clients, I need more staff. And because of the nature of our industry being or the industries that we support being quite disruptive and fast moving, it's not like you can pull somebody off the street who understands that market. Regulatory compliance in food has been around for years. Regulatory compliance in cosmetics have been around for years. Novel nicotine, not so much. So trying to get somebody in, that's the big choke point. So I decided to not pivot entirely, but make a pivot into creating more software. Now, we developed some really good software tools, but the ability to harness AI in a responsible way. So, ChatGPT can go out and fire, and if there's a gap, it'll hallucinate the gaps. What we've done is using the regulatory knowledge base that we have, that we would use for our own consultancy purposes, and then attaching an AI brain to that. So you're working from a curated knowledge base with guardrails. That allows us to multiply our efficiency and offer tools. So there's a large, that section of the market, that's 75% that we turn away because they don't fit our ICP. They still need support, but they might not be a 30 or 100 grand a year client. They might be a 2 grand a year client.
Yeah,
5, so
10, whatever it could be.
yeah.
It's
So what we've done with these tools, so created something called Mavericks. So Mavericks is, we work with disruptive founders, the Mavericks, the guys who don't want to play by the rules. So I developed something called Mavericks, and we've got Mavericks Assistant, which is essentially a regulatory assistant tool that covers things like its regulatory Q&A, ingredient screening, regulatory horizon scanning, which is a key, really key one that people miss, changes in regulations, and then industry news. So that's like a low cost regulatory assistant in your pocket.
but it fits the need of the majority of people who are looking at it, and they go, okay, I need to still have something. I may not get the whole, and using a Hispanic phrase, I'm not buying the whole enchilada here, but I do want that taquito, and I'll take that, and that's the one that we might want.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's almost like a stepping stone to them. It gives them an opportunity to realize their obligations. They can start mapping those out internally rather than using an external consultant.
No, rarely in a conversation, Lee, do I go up that almost at 40 minutes. Our 40 minutes has flown by, and I was going to enjoy it. I love the conversation. I mean, I learned some things, and in particular, I had empathy for what you got through in your family and mine. But what I'd like to make sure we do now for the audience is find out ways people can reach Arcus Compliance and you individually. So would you please share that with people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the website is arcuscompliance.com. You can reach through the contact page on that, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's just Lee Bryan, Leebryan. I manage my own LinkedIn profile as well, so I do genuinely chat with everybody. That's probably the best way to reach out to me. The main thing for me is all of these little startup beauty brands that are making their money on LinkedIn. Sorry, not LinkedIn, on TikTok. I'd love for you to maintain that growth. If you've built it up to 6 figures, you've clearly got something. Make sure you don't lose it. Just underpin it with some regulatory knowledge and structure.
Solid advice, Lee. Thank you so much for your time today. I think the audience will benefit from this. Really appreciate your input. Have a great day.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Principal Podcast. We hope you've learned valuable lessons and strategies to grow your firm and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.